I am absolutely ecstatic today to bring to you an interview with Seth Miller, the Wandering Aramean. Seth is one of the boarding area bloggers, which for those of you who don't know is sort of the gold standard for points and miles blogs. It's an aggregation of some of the best ones out there. Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning, and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric, checking in with you guys from Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. I'm at the Hyatt Regency here for the Frequent Traveler University event. This is actually the first time I've been back in the U.S. in 2015, so really happy to be home, even more happy to be surrounded by so many people that are passionate about international travel and also passionate about using points and miles to save and to really expand the possibility of travel. There's just a really great crowd here. I've learned a whole bunch of new tips and new strategies that I'm looking forward to using to improve this podcast and improve our website and help all of you guys out there maximize the value of your points and miles. So this has been a great experience, and I am absolutely ecstatic today to bring to you an interview with Seth Miller, the Wandering Aramean. Seth is one of the boarding area bloggers, which for those of you who don't know is sort of the gold standard for points and miles blogs. It's an aggregation of some of the best ones out there. He's also a very frequent contributor to Flyer Talk, which is the main forum where you can truly get up-to-date hacking information about mistake fares, manufactured spending, ways to game the system, earn more points, redeem points for higher value. I am being completely sincere when I say that this guy probably has more information bouncing around in his head than 99.9% of people out there. So it was a real pleasure to interview him. One sort of technical note on the interview is that we recorded this, and as I went back through to kind of listen and get ready to do our editing, I realized that something went wrong with the computer, and there are some big sections that got cut out. Just in the middle of conversation, there's some sections of this interview that just went missing. And so we did the best job we possibly could to fill in. You'll hear a couple of sections where it's obviously cut, and I even just filled in a few questions just to try and put context in because the rest of the question got cut off, and what Seth says doesn't make any sense. So if there's parts that are confusing, that's totally on us, and I really apologize for that. But I had to air this episode because it's just too much extremely valuable information to cancel on this one just because of some technical difficulties. So I hope you guys work your way through it, and also definitely check out the show notes for today's episode because Seth has some incredible tools, some things that I just recently discovered and I'm going to be using to help book my travel and help our customers to be able to get better trips. Seth is a little bit of a genius, I think, with scripting and scraping websites and aggregating information, and a couple of the tools that we're going to share are truly revolutionary. So please do check out the notes for today's episode, which are going to be at abroaders.com/Seth. That's SETH. We're going to jump into the interview here. I started out by asking Seth to tell me a little bit about how he got started with travel and what were some of his first most memorable travel experiences.
I started traveling on my own sort of, in college. I went to school away from home and had to fly back and forth and whatever, and then went on spring breaks and things like that. But actually, by that point, sort of like was planning them, not just buying the random package tour, and then got a work job that had me traveling a ton. And that's when I started earning all these crazy points and miles. And then 2001, found out about this site called Flyer Talk that helped people figure out how to use their miles better. And so 14 years later now, I've been a member of Flyer Talk for 14 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I actually just joined Flyer Talk, like really recently. I was like, this is so stupid. This is like our business, our podcast, and like I don't even have
and the irony is I started using it like in September, October 2000, but I never wanted to post because I thought it was weird. And you needed to sign in, you needed to log in to be able to do a search. And so I joined so I could do a search.
Okay.
Today I have like the fifth most posts on the site.
No shit.
Yeah. Some of them are even useful. There's a solid chunk of them that were like lounge threads and people not saying anything particularly of value.
Mm-hmm.
But I have over 60,000 posts on Flyer Talk.
Shit, man. That's really impressive.
So yeah, that's a problem. But that's how I started traveling. I think I wanted to start traveling probably 10 years prior, 15 years prior to that, basically since I was a tiny kid. And that actually came from seeing my father, who traveled for work, come home with cool toys, mostly for me, for my brother and sister too. But he went to China in 1984, right when it opened up, and came back, and I had like cute little Chinese kid pajamas, and they're like basically the same footy pajamas that we get in the States. Now they're all made in China anyways.
Manufactured there in China. It was cooler when your dad brought them.
Yeah, it was cooler
China.
when my dad brought them home directly. Like just like a stamp with my name on it in Mandarin, and like he had that. He went to Italy and came home, and he's like worked there for a month, and then came home and had this stuff, and just always had fun stories.
Did you get to travel with your dad?
I did actually. When I was 13, he had a business trip to Madrid, Lyon, and Paris.
Okay. And
I tagged along. This was in the summer. Mm-hmm. It was hot, as you might imagine. It was nice. And what's interesting about that one is I didn't speak any Spanish. I didn't speak any French. And he was on a work trip. So he
had to kind of fend for yourself a little
bit. He gave me, some pesetas. I think this is before the euro.
Yep.
So he gave me some Spanish currency. It was in Madrid. It's like, okay, I arranged this half-day bus tour for you, English speaking. Uh-huh. You're going to go to the big museum. There's the big art museum in town, and like a couple other things. I forget what the name of it is. Obviously left a lasting impression.
Well, it's not important what the museum is called.
And I did it. And it was like, it was like a 9 to 2 kind of tour. Yeah. And that covered most of the day, but like he was working and wasn't due back until 5 or 6. And so it was like, well, now what do I do? And I had like $20 worth of pesetas on my pocket, and like, it had dumped me off vaguely in front of the hotel. And I kind of knew where I was, but this is like, I'm a 13-year-old boy in Madrid who doesn't speak the language, has $20 in my pocket, and I guess someone's looking for me in a couple hours, but I'm not entirely sure what to do right now. Yeah. I know, I'll go wander around town. Yeah. And I did. And I was walking around, I had like, street food cart, little woman selling ice cream, and I decided I wanted an ice cream cone of some sort. Like I pointed at it, and she handed it to me, and she said something, and I reached my hand in my pocket, and I had a bunch of coins, just held out my hand with all the coins in it. And I didn't know what any of them were worth. I didn't know what any of it was. And she like pointed at a couple of them, and I'm like, okay, nodded, handed her the coins. She smiled back to me. I have no idea how much I paid for that ice cream cone.
Yeah, I really love those simple transactions. First of all, there's things that you realize that are so fundamentally easy to communicate, even though in English you would use a whole bunch of words, that you can have a transaction. And that was actually one of my favorite things when I was learning Portuguese was like, I would see how far I could get into the interaction without them identifying me as a gringo. Brazil is like one of the places where you can do that because they're so diverse. You really don't look like you necessarily stand out. But it was always just really impressive to me the way that you could get through charades and get people to understand and do transactions and maybe even overpay a little bit. But the times that, the value of that experience of just like connecting with people without having to have a real conversation.
I had a few years ago now, a trip on Lufthansa in business class. I was flying from Munich to LA. Mm-hmm. And I sat down on the plane in business class, and the flight attendant walks by and she's got a tray of drinks. Mm-hmm. And I have no idea what she said, but in context, I knew she was asking me if I wanted a drink. And I know that they call champagne sect. And I said, sect, bitte. And she hands me a glass of bubbles, and I sit there and I drink it, and we take off. They do the safety briefing. The whole works. They come by with a drink trolley for the first drink service after departure, and I wanted white wine. So I Weisswein, bitte. And so I fast forward to mealtime now, like an hour and a half after I first got on the plane. And she comes by and starts speaking to me in German to order my meal. I'm like, I don't speak German. I'm very sorry. Could you do it in English? She's like, we've been talking German for the last hour and a half. What do you mean you don't speak German? I drink in German. And every single interaction we had was me ordering a drink. Yeah. And once I explained to her that I had the important bits down, but the food I don't really do yet. We had a great rest of the flight laughing about that.
You can certainly tell if somebody learned in school or if somebody learned in real life because you've got like, where's the bathroom? How do I get a drink? All the different ways to order things that actually come up in real life.
I will admit somewhat embarrassingly that on my last trip to Germany, which was just this past week, I did Colombian for dinner one night and Italian for dinner one night because I speak those languages better, which is not to say I speak them at all, but I can fight my way through those menus languages better, and I just still don't have the German.
Well, I think that was something I wanted to ask you about. I mean, obviously, it's a great feeling when you do speak a little different level, but it's totally impractical to know all the languages for the places you're going to go. If you're going to try and do that, you're not going to see the world.
Yeah, if I have to learn the language first before I go there, I'm just not good at languages, among other things.
Yeah.
But I was talking to someone earlier today, and he came up and he says, "You travel to a lot of places." I've been to a few, but he's like, "How do you deal with you can't speak the language?" He's like, "I'm scared. Wouldn't it be really hard?"
No, especially if you're not.
What I said to him is, it's good to be frightened. The language thing is challenging. When I was in Tokyo, I tried to order a beer at the sushi shop. To the best of my knowledge, there's 3 or 4 brands. I'm pretty good order. I was at the counter. I can order with my fingers. She's saying things, and I'm the waitress, and she says, "Yeah," and I was like, "Kieran?" And she looks at me with a blank face. And finally, the guys next to me at the counter had beers, and I pointed at their drink. At this point, I don't care. It was, cold and wet and delicious, and went great with sushi. But did I really not get beer because I can't figure out the name of it? And that was a little disappointing to me, but I did get the beer eventually. So
it's interesting. I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is what are the things you like the most about immersion in a place that's totally different than what you're used to?
For starters, I'm not entirely sure I make the immersion work, but last time I went to Rio, I think I immersed reasonably well. I landed, dropped myself off at the room, put on a bathing suit, and sat on the beach all day. I think I immersed myself pretty well. It was good.
Sounds like a good Brazilian day.
I'm reasonably certain that's how they all spend their days, because the beach was really crowded, ridiculously entertaining, and you sort of, every now and then you get that sort of epiphany breakthrough moment where you can connect with the locals even if you don't speak the language, and have that sort of, it really is like an epiphany of a moment where like something happens and it feels right. It's hard to put it too much clearer in the words, but it really just feels right. You're having a conversation or even just a silly shared experience where like you're both sitting on the bus and you smile at each other kind of thing. And like they recognize what you're doing, you recognize what they're doing, and it worked.
Yeah, there is that recognition that you have. You don't even, it's an unspoken thing a lot of times, but you just kind of like, something makes you smile, something makes you happy, and that happens to me all the time. Do you have any goals around traveling?
More.
Just more.
People ask me, do I have a bucket list? So am I trying to get to every country? I keep track of countries I've been to. I keep track of airports I've been to. I keep track of obsessed with data.
I want to ask you some of those
I'm a
later.
big data-obsessed dork. I'm not sure I have all the numbers. That's why I track them. I do all of those things, and it's not because I need all of them, even need or want all of them, but I kind of like knowing where I've been and what I've done. Mm-hmm. Do I want to visit every country? Meh. Seems like a good idea. I think there's, neat things to see and do. Am I going to sacrifice, going to Japan again with my wife and her parents because I've already been 4 times? Well, of course not. Even if that means I don't get the trip to Mongolia later this year because on the Beijing mistake fair, I could have maybe done that if I didn't spend the money on this trip. And even there, I had the money, I could do it. It's just like...
Yeah, there's trade-offs.
But there are trade-offs. I tell you, sometimes we go back places. I don't go back to a lot of places, but there may be one place on my do not return list. I haven't decided it. It was on the list. I haven't decided if it's earned an exemption
What's
yet.
The place?
Togo. In the armpit of Africa.
I was going to ask you, is that the place where you got robbed and robbed?
Yeah, it's the place where I robbed the guy.
Tell me this story.
So I was staying in Accra, Ghana, which is a little west of there, but Ghana and Togo border each other, and where the capital city is actually on the border as opposed to sort of inside the country, and I don't remember the other one, so don't ask me.
Okay.
So my plan was I was going to walk across the border into the capital city,
Yep.
Make my march on Togo, because he's driving me over, and my driver was a very large black man. Black is pretty obvious since I'm, in Ghana, but he was a big guy. He was driving me out. Then he spoke pretty good English, which was nice. And we're shooting the shit for 3 hours, and we're hanging out. And I explained to him, I'm going to walk across the border. And I left most of my stuff at the hotel back in Ghana. I just took like an overnight bag. So I was traveling light. But one of the things I had to do was I had to convert currency and buy a visa on arrival. And it was $60 or $70, so I had money for the day kind of thing. Okay. And walk across the street under the arch. And now I'm in the Togo immigration space. And I'll change money. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you're right, I need to change money. And so I pull out a couple bucks, I bought the $50 or whatever I need to change, and I give it to him. He gives me a rate that's not correct and doesn't give me the right amounts. And he's like, what, no tip? And I'm like, you gave me a really shitty exchange rate. I go over, the immigration official has this massive paper ledger. Seriously, 3 foot. He just wrote this long, he wrote out my name and all my passport details in a book, pasted stamps off of a receipt book into the passport to indicate that I paid, stamped it, signed it. Mm-hmm. It was a very cool sort of old school passport. Yeah,
not going to be looking up if you overstayed your visa.
No, they will not.
System.
And so I do that. I go in and I keep walking, and the grifter has come through, and he's got some buddies with him now also. And he's like, hey, yeah, we got a taxi for you. We got a taxi. I'm like, no, I'm going to walk there. No, taxi. It's cheap. It's cheap. It's, it's like $5 or whatever. And again, I could have fought it a little bit, but I chose not to fight it because it was getting uncomfortable. Have you ever seen The Sting?
No.
Another great movie you should see.
The
openings, they're a little older. I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm guessing I'm older than you.
28.
Yeah, I got 10 years on you. So, and Police Academy is in my age. The Sting is even older, but it's a great film. It actually is fun.
I'm sure we have people that have heard
the opening sequence of The Sting. There's a hustle, and the hustle is they pretend that they're giving him money, and they say, no, take out all your money. I got to hide all of your money. And then they basically do a swap. They put it in one hand. Here, let me show you how to hide your money. You got to hide your money. Let me show you. Show me all the money you got in your pocket. I got to show you how to hide your money. It'll be fine. It's like, no, you got to do it. You got to do it. And again, this is where I should have stood up for myself and fought it initially, and it probably would have been better. I'm sitting in the taxi, by the way. Like I'm sitting in the car and the door is open. And he's like, I have a wad of side, a couple 20s and a couple 50s. I knew that I could pull 5 off the outside and or 50 out. At this point, it's out. And he starts flipping through it. And I have this thought like, shit, he's going to get to the middle and find the 50s. And I'm screwed. And I look down and I'm like, oh, crap, the 50s and a few of the 20s, they're gone. Turn and look at him. He's standing over my shoulder. He's like, okay, you go now. I'm like, no, give me back my money. He's like, what are you talking about? You have your money. It's a PG-ish podcast. So I started dropping the F-bomb like it was going out of style. Basically every other word. It was ridiculous. And he was just standing there, and he's a money changer. He's holding this wad of cash, his money. And I grab one of his hands and turn it over, and there's the 20s. Like, that's my credit. He actually managed, while stealing my money, to separate the 50 from the 20s. But I knew there was a $50 bill. And I don't think he knew that there was a difference in them, but I knew. And so I kept going at him. It was like pink and purple and yellow currency. And sticking out of the corner underneath, I see a tint of green. So I've already turned one of his hands over. I then look at his other hand and grab the massive rubber banded wad out of it. So I'm holding all of his money now.
Brilliant.
At this point is when I should have been shivved, right? I mean, there's no good reason I'm alive still based on this experience, but blood's hard to clean out of a cab, I guess. And there's the $50 bill. I'm like, that is also my effing money. And I took it out of his hand and handed him his wad of money back, closed the door, and we drove off.
Nice, man.
It was an absolutely surreal experience. Even remembering it now, I still get a little freaked out about it. I
had a buddy that was arrested in Colombia for like a little bit of pot. He had like a couple of. The police had the pot on the table, and they didn't ever eventually succeed at shaking him down. He an Australian guy, and he had the audacity to grab the pot back, and he stole all of the pot back from the police and showed up at the hostel later. He was like, yeah, I just got out of jail, but I managed to get the drugs back. So.
Yeah, and in retrospect, my thought has always been, had the guy turned and walked away from the car, I'd like to think I wouldn't have followed him. A couple of years later, when someone picked my pocket in Montevideo, I did, in fact, chase him into an unmarked building, so maybe I would have followed this guy, too. One of these days, I'll start making rational decisions.
It's hard to put it in perspective at the time. You're pissed off. You're I
was down $50 in Montevideo holding a $800 SLR camera chasing after a guy.
Yeah.
That's just not smart at any level.
Not good risk management.
Bad experiences I've had in
a lot of
60 countries and 200,000 miles a year for the last 4 years. So,
horror story here and there. Maybe they don't ever happen to you, but you can't let hearing about that dissuade you.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. The American Airlines 787 just took off out our window.
Sweet, man. Yeah.
You see that curve
this
on the
is cool.
wing?
Man, I love it. I'm super fascinated by aircraft and flying. I want to talk to you a little bit about elite status and spend a lot of time consuming content, trying to learn how to reduce the cost of traveling and seeing the world. Right now, what are the airlines that you give your business and why?
Sure. So I have two different ways I look at it. One is, who do I want to fly on?
And Seth goes on to say that the other is, where do you actually want to earn your points? And he says that at the moment his loyalty is with United, but obviously not without some problems.
And sometimes those interests overlap. Often they do not.
Sure.
I'm currently in a not so much state. It's getting worse and worse. It kind of sucks. And I can be grumpy and pissy about it, but it's the way it is, and me being grumpy and pissy isn't going to change that, so I need to figure out how to make it better. And with the recent changes, the award chart shuffles, all those things, the points are easier for me to redeem to the places I want to go and the types of travel I'm interested in. And so it works for me. I'm sure it doesn't work for everybody. I know it doesn't. There's a lot of people I talk to I know it wouldn't work for. But
it is very personal in terms of what type of travel, where you want to go.
It is, and what bothers me a lot is when someone just says outright program X is best.
Yeah.
Even if it is for me, if it's the same choice I would make, it's how do you know? You haven't even asked me what my goals are.
Right.
How can you tell me that I should be collecting points in Oasis Airlines when you don't know what I'm trying to get to?
Well, that's actually a really good segue into, what do you think are the most important factors for people to consider when they're trying to decide where to acquire points? And
Sure. So you have to consider where you're starting from, right? Where do you live?
Mm-hmm.
What's your home base? What types of tickets are you buying? Because different airlines earn differently, even on the same, different programs will earn differently for the same ticket.
Mm-hmm.
If you buy a lot of full fare tickets, you may want to credit to a program that lets those earn and accrue at a bigger multiplier, even though the award chart isn't quite as good because you're earning them so much faster, kind of situation. And then what's your goal from your earning, right? Are awards more important or is elite status recognition more important, right? Do you want free unlimited domestic upgrades, a concept which really doesn't exist anymore, but good luck with that anyways? Or is your goal award travel?
Mm-hmm.
Do you
have you been an elite with United?
I am. I've been elite for a long time. I'm actually a million miler now, so I'm gold for life. Until they change the program again.
Until they say, we don't want to do that anymore.
So far, the courts have said they're allowed to, so it's an interesting scenario.
You've had some pretty crazy itineraries. I envy the folks that have been in this a little longer. I hear about the Wild West.
I did
and people were buying
one of my
yogurt tops. And
basically. I did Stockholm to Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
Took me 4 days, and so I left mid-afternoon from Stockholm, flew to Berlin, got in late afternoon, hung out for a little while, then flew the next day, Berlin via Munich to Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Okay.
Took the cab into town, hung out, dropped my stuff off at the hostel, walked around all afternoon, had dinner, woke up the next morning, did a walk along the riverfront in the morning, grabbed my bag, went back to the airport, flew from there to Skopje, Macedonia. So former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. We have to adhere to the rules. Did the same thing and by the way, culture shock of a whole different world. They use the Cyrillic alphabet there. Oops, or some version that's not the Latin alphabet. Or squiggles. I'm sure they are letters, but spent 2 nights in Istanbul. I believe that is actually technically still bookable because it was only 5 segments. But
wow,
the separate ticket that was on to and from Europe was Newark to Stockholm, and then Istanbul, Munich, Stockholm. The connection in Munich on the way home was 23 hours and 55 minutes.
That's brilliant. That's getting.
And then they changed the schedule. It was like one of those things. Like it was awesome, except for the part where, like, if you actually wanted to get home, it was awful,
right?
Because you had an forced overnight no matter what. In my case, I have a friend who lives in Munich who picked me up at the airport and we went and hung out all day.
Yeah, that's great.
So that was a week where I had 2 different ridiculous itineraries like that. One was a revenue and one was an award.
All right. Well, let's do. I want to do just like a little bit of maybe rapid fire, just like things that first thing that comes to mind. What's your favorite airport in the world?
Favorite airport domestically, I actually really like JFK T5, the JetBlue terminal. It's very comfortable, very fun. Internationally, the terminal at Haneda is okay. Munich is super easy to connect through.
Okay.
They basically stack international Schengen and non-Schengen right on top of each other. It's not a very long terminal. And it was not a great airport, but it's super easy.
Okay.
So
that's a good one.
I'll give you 3 answers for a single answer question.
No, that's good.
What's your scariest landing or takeoff experience?
I've had a couple aborted takeoffs and a couple aborted landings. Missed approach, if you will. We were flying Orlando to LaGuardia, Delta MD-80, and when you're on final approach and you hear the wheels retract and the engines throttle, you're like, yep, we're going back up. It was emergency vehicles on the runway.
Wow.
And a guy on the ground had died, actually. So we had to circle around him. It's a horrible reason for it. Fortunately, our plane was safe as a ramp worker had died. That was, in retrospect, even more significantly spooky.
I feel like if you fly enough, I've never had a go around or any sort of missed landing. So,
what's your favorite premium cabin experience?
Total experience. Singapore Suites was pretty damn nice. I think the service was very nice. I don't think it's necessarily worth the spend. I'm a guy who flies a lot in coach. I like the splurge of business class, and I've done the Emirates shower in the sky. So
cool, man.
One of the things that we haven't talked about yet is some of the tools that you've created. Man, I honestly discovered these just recently after meeting you, and I'm just bashing my head on the table why didn't I have this before?
Yeah, I'm not really good at marketing, it turns out.
Yeah.
In fact, awful at marketing.
You're too quiet, man.
I basically built a list of all the routes operated by Avios partners.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got Alaska Air, it's got American, all the One World partners. I generated this database of, something like 4,000 or 5,000 routes flown in the world. And then I can do a search. If you say I want to go from A to C, I look up all the flights that may have a B in the middle. And so I'll give you A, B, C, A, D, C, A, E, C, all these different routes. And New York to LA nonstop is one number. It's 12,000, 25,000, depending on where the connection is and how long the segments are.
Yeah.
And so you learn, like, okay, if I can't get the nonstop, maybe I want to try for Nashville first as a connection point, ironically, as opposed to DC or Miami, because it's fewer points. And I think that's accurate. Check the charts, but I'm doing it from memory.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. The other obvious thing I have is actually a map view where you pick, I don't know if you saw this even, you pick the city that you're in, and color-coded it'll show you these are the 4,500 point cities, destinations. These are the 7,500 point destinations. These are the 10,000s, and these are the 12.5s.
That's cool. So it's like a halo that shows you how far
you can. It's Google Maps mashup sort of thing. So you get a Google map and got a dot in the middle that's your city.
That's cool.
And it sort of does colored colored icons all around, and you hover over them, and it tells you where you're going to be able to get to.
Very cool.
So the Avios stuff is actually a lot of fun, and it's data that you'd think Avios would have maybe tried to make available at some point. Answer, but yeah, I really like the Avios stuff. The Avios stuff is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. I mean, it's such a unique program. It's a totally different way to use miles than the standard zone-based chart.
Have you seen Hotel Hustle?
Yeah, Hotel Hustle is phenomenal.
So that's a hotel search.
When I found Hotel Hustle, we're going to be offering a full service.
There you go. Well, licensing, I'm pretty cheap. It's free. Basically lets you search sort of city by city, and you can do airport codes, cities.
And it shows you how many points and how much it costs.
And it does the calculation, right? I want to get the most value for my points. Starwood points and Hyatt points are inherently worth more. They're harder to earn, but they're worth more.
Yep.
So you can't just say they're better, right? If I say, I'm getting 1.8 cents per Starwood point on a booking, on a possible award, it's actually not a great deal. If I can get 1.8% on a Hilton point, it's a phenomenal deal.
Right.
Or even 1.5 is a phenomenal. So I couldn't say the 1.5 is lower than the 1.8 because the 1.5 is like a 3x the average of a Hilton point, and the 1.8 is like 0.8,
and I heard that in your talk today. So that's the way you're sorting.
So I'm sorting by comparing to the nominal average of that program. In the behind the scenes on the back end, before I display the data to you, I sort the display based on how good a deal you're getting. And, single click sets up an alert for you, and it'll send you an email when the room becomes available, or if it becomes available. If you've registered and you don't like my point values, you've decided that Starwood points are worth 2.6 cents, not 2.2 cents. You can type that in, and I'll use your values for the calculations.
Well, that flexibility is awesome, and kudos to you for building in that. I hope that everybody that's interested in using points checks it out.
And at the end of the day, you still get your credit, you still get your stay, all that stuff. I'm not an OTA that sits in the middle and sort of takes those things away from you.
To clarify here, Seth is talking about nights and stays for the purpose of hotel elite status. And one of the issues with sites like Expedia or Orbitz is that when you book a hotel through them, you don't actually get to keep the elite stay. Or in other words, the hotel chain isn't going to honor your stay or the nights that you've got there towards your elite status, and they're not going to give you the benefits. And that's one of the great things about the Hotel Hustle app is it does take you directly to the hotel site, so you can still get that.
Any new projects coming up?
Someone asked me that earlier. I think I'm going to try to sleep at some point in the next month or two. That's the biggest project I got working on. If you're looking for another sort of travel-ish podcast, I would throw Dots, Lines, and Destinations at you. Me and a couple buddies do that every other week. More Dots, More Lines.com.
Fridays, right?
Thursdays. It comes out Thursday, 1 p.m. if I do it right.
Thursday. It's a nice follow-up to the Wednesday Abroaders podcast.
There you go. But More Dots, More Lines.com is where you'll find that. Obviously, I imagine you put some of the stuff in the show notes.
Cool, yeah, we will have links in the show notes to all these tools, as well as Seth's blog, Dots, Lines, and Destinations.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
My pleasure.
This week's international jam is by a French hip-hop artist who goes by the stage name of Wax Taylor. That's Tailor. And I had a little bit of trouble picking this one because there's 3 that I really like. So you should definitely check out a couple. This guy's got like 4 studio albums. The 2 that didn't end up making the final cut are Que Sera and How I Feel. So you can find those ones on Spotify. But I couldn't find the one that I picked for this week anywhere else. So I thought this would be the best one to share. The track is called Fireflies. And I hope you guys enjoy it. We will, of course, be back next Wednesday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wherever you are, safe travels.
She hold her love with a statue pose, and he ain't even got a kiss from a rose. So or will they let it glow?
Hey Brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.